Future model 38-inch PP slick. So I'm going to be following pretty much the same build procedure for the slick as I did for the edge. It's kind of interesting, the chord length on the slick is about an inch greater than it is on the edge, so that should give maybe 10% greater wing area, so it's probably going to be a pretty floaty plane. Also, the rudder on the slick's just a little bit larger than it is on the edge, so that's a good thing. Okay, going to follow pretty much the same procedure as I did on the 38-inch edge. Sunny Sky motor, 2216 1250 kV, 10x5 APC prop, and 11 RX7 receiver with a stabilization. Yep, 30 amp ESC. These work really good. And I'm going to give these King Max servos a try. They put out a little bit more torque than the Coronas, although the Coronas work great. Okay, we'll start by installing the rudder and elevator servos. These servos have really long wires. They also have some really nice long arms, which will make it pretty nice. And the kit comes with these long servo extension wires, which are much longer than I need to get to right over in this area right in here. So I'm going to go ahead and use some shorter extension wires here. Okay, these King Max servos are a little larger than the Coronas, and I had to enlarge the hole for the servo here, maybe 3 or 4 millimeters. Okay, the rudder servo is installed, and the elevator servo. And now we install the landing gear into the fuselage. I'm going to use a little bit of goop to secure it. And now we slide the wing into the fuselage. Now we measure from the right wingtip to the tail of the plane on the right side and the left side, and we adjust it till they're equal, right around 27.5 inch. Secure the wing with goop. This is craft goop. You can get it at Hobby Lobby. And a little goop on the bottom of the wing and the outer top. Now we turn the elevator upside down and we insert it into the fuselage, push it in all the way in, and then we flip it right side up. Now we push the horizontal stabilizer into the fuselage, and once it's in, we can go ahead and put the elevator in. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue the elevator hinges into the horizontal stabilizer as well as the ailerons, and I'll use 30-minute epoxy for that. Normally I would use foam safe CA, but I'm out of that stuff. Okay, I've got epoxy on all 4 hinges, and then we just push the hinges in and wipe off the excess epoxy with a paper towel on both sides. And now I'm going to beef up the motor box, and they supplied some carbon fiber square stock here. I'm probably going to use some of this material I already have. It's flat stock. I think it's a little stronger. And the goal will be to beef it up something like this, like I did on the edge. This is held up really well. Okay, the motor box is beefed up with carbon fiber. Got a little bit of fiberglass down in there also. And that should make it nice and rigid. A little bit of carbon fiber under the bottom as well. And the glue is all dried on the aileron and the elevator hinges. Epoxy works real good. I've done that before. Now the tail wheel assembly goes onto the rudder. Cut a little notch in here for the tail wheel assembly. And I've got that epoxied onto the rudder. Let that set up. And then we add the tail wheel. Now we install the rudder and glue it in with epoxy. Okay, the rudder's glued on, and got to pay particular attention to this gap up here. Seems about right. And then we glue the tail wheel assembly onto the aft end of the fuselage. It sits a little too far low, so I cut a little piece of EPP and we'll glue that on there, just like that. Now we put the main wheels on. Here we go. Next, the aileron control horns go on, and I'm going to rough that up a little bit so the epoxy will stick better. And the aileron horns are glued in. Now we'll glue in the elevator horn and the rudder horn. There's the rudder horn glued in, and there's the back side of the rudder horn. It's got a little end plate on there. And the same thing for the elevator. There's the elevator horn. And now for the landing gear pants. Put one on either side of the landing gear like that, and we'll glue that down with goop. So we get these started like that, just wedge them in there, and we'll just clamp that in place just like that. And I'll let that set up overnight. Now we'll install the aileron servos. And now we'll put the motor together. Motor is ready, and I used a little bit of goop on the threads to keep them from backing out, which they will do in time. I prefer it to thread lock. Now we'll go ahead and mount the motor. There's 4 little holes there that are already pre-marked. I'll go ahead and drill those out. Holes are drilled, and here's the bolts ready. Also going to use washers on the back of the firewall because I've had them pull through without. Motor is mounted. Now I'll mount the ESC, and the speed control is installed and hooked up to the motor. We'll go ahead and install the receiver next. Okay, the servos and the ESC are all hooked up to the receiver. I'm going to go ahead and bind it. Alright, it's all bound up. Remove the bind plug and reconnect, and check for proper motor rotation. Looks good. Next, we'll go ahead and mount the receiver right about there. I'll use a little goop for that. Okay, the receiver is mounted. Going to go ahead and install the canopy, and then we'll put the motor cowl on. Okay, the cowl is test fitted, and the motor is pretty well centered. You can adjust the cowl as needed to get everything lined up. There's 4 pieces of wood in here that we're going to screw into. The motor cowl gets screwed in with these 4 little screws right here. Put little washers on them. And here's the tabs to screw the cowl into. Okay, the cowl is on and the prop is installed. And I have clearance right in there. We have clearance in there so that it doesn't rub up against the cowl. Install the velcro for the battery next. I like to add a little tie down for the battery because the velcro sometimes will give way when you're doing really hard aerobatics. And there's the battery tie down. Okay, now we'll go ahead and put our control rods together and install the servo arms, get everything hooked up. Okay, control rods are all installed. Here's the ailerons. And the elevator. And the rudder. And the final step was to install the winglets. These are just placed on with goop. They provide screws if you want to use them, but I found goop does a pretty good job of holding them in place. And now to show the servo travel, here's the ailerons. Full left, full right, and from the side. And the elevator all the way up to the stop, and the same thing on the down. And the rudder, full left, full right. So after the first couple of flights, I had to remove these King Max servos. They weren't centering very well, and the plane wouldn't track very well at all. And I went back to using these Coronas that I normally use. Corona CS939 on the aileron and rudder. These things center perfectly, and they're not very expensive servos, but I've had really good luck with them.